I'm gonna give you some key lessons from a major competition, and we're gonna start right now. So this past weekend, we were in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And yes, I'm clarifying New Mexico, mainly because I had two people ask me where Albuquerque was. So we were indeed in New Mexico. And some of the big questions that I got asked are, what are the lessons from a major competition like that, U.S. Indoor National Championships, which also was a qualifier for the World Championships. And then another big question was, okay, what do you do with that information from indoors? Is the training lining up well? You know, how did everyone perform? And just looking at the surface, we had 4 different throwers there. Rachel Fatherly got 7th, Taman Johnson got 8th, but then looking at it, Taman Johnson was somebody that I thought could have thrown quite a bit better. Didn't perform great, but that's something that we can touch on. Rachel's another individual that I want to touch on with some big lessons that we can go over. And then Nick Curtis is one who popped off, threw really, really well, ended up getting 5th, was in the 3rd place spot. Now, what are some of these lessons, okay? Oftentimes, the first thing that I do is I look at it and I go, okay, what was the training purpose leading into this meet? And when we analyze throwing in a year that is an Olympic trials year, an Olympic year, the goal is not what the result is indoor. The goal is how can we set this up for a big outdoor season. We're building into the Olympic trials. We have to get to the Olympic trials, then we have to qualify again in the qualification and then try to make the final. And then if we're in a really good spot, try to make the team. So the first big question then is, how well can our athletes compete when they're training very, very hard? So they competed pretty well during the indoor season. Then how well do they compete in a big meet when they're under a lot of fatigue and under a lot of stress? And then on a week-to-week basis, if we're going heavier or going lighter or doing partial range of motion movements or doing full range of motion movements, how are they competing on that week-to-week basis? Then we can take that information and then base that off the organism or the athlete and say, okay, this year they're competing well when they lift better, or this year they're competing well when they do more partial range of motion movements. So we can take that information, then analyze that, take that, and help them peak better as we work towards the U.S. Olympic trials in the outdoor season. So that's that first key lens that we sort of look at everything. Some of the big lessons, I want to talk right away about Ryan Krauser. One of the big things with Krauser is when you're looking at him, first of all, I noticed he was doing a little bit different position with the slide. He had been a little bit more open here. Now he's almost a little bit more neutral or partially inward here, a little bit more narrow leading into the slide. So that was one big thing that I saw, watching the greatest of all time. And I will say this, I love watching him compete. It sort of sucks because we have competitors going against him, but I also understand he's a generational type guy. He's a Tom Brady type individual. So to be able to see what he's doing, take notes, and to learn from him, that's freaking awesome. Another big lesson, Danny Hall broke the world record. I've got to spend a lot of time with Danny over the years. I got to talk to him quite a bit. We discuss nutrition, we discuss training, we discuss his small calves, and we go into all these, different fun conversations. One of the big things that I want to point out there is he broke the world record in the weight throw. This dude was so chill. Before he broke the world record in the weight throw, he was giving me a wink. I think that's one big aspect that a lot of throwers put tons and tons of pressure on themselves. Okay, they're always just thinking this is going to be, if I don't throw far, I'm going to be miserable, blah, blah, blah. They just dig a hole, they dig a hole, they dig a hole. Danny broke the world record winking at people, like having fun, enjoying that moment, really just being about it. And I think that that's one big aspect that we can learn. Everybody can learn from a world record holder like Hall or even a world record holder like Krauser, is that they're enjoying that process. They're enjoying the throw. They're enjoying the technical aspect, and they see it from a logical perspective. Going back to Krauser, one of the things for him is it's like he's taking these throws as slow as possible. He still hits the finish, but he might just walk through hitting positions, and then he hits that front. And I think that's something that we can take as younger throwers are coming up through the ranks, realize it's important to hit positions, not throw as hard as possible. Now, 2 other aspects here that I've learned, big time aspects that I've learned, and I didn't even mention Lucas Warning. Some of the big aspects around Lucas is just getting him to drop more with the glide, being patient out of the back, being in technically double support out of the back a little bit longer. So that's another side lesson. I don't want Lucas to get upset, okay? Now, going back to these 2 aspects, talking about Rachel. So Rachel has thrown 1920. When Rachel's thrown 1920, her left leg was very fast to the front. She would hit that left sector on her finish, mainly because she was rotating so well. One of the issues now that I see in her throw is that she's very late coming off that left leg. And now, why is she late? What I tend to see happen is that as she gets here, she puts this heel down, and when she puts it down, she extends, and as she cuts that right, okay, here is what happens. She goes, boom. So it lengthens the left, and then she's later coming off of it. Some people are going to comment down below and say, well, Krauser drops his left or whatever, this thrower drops their left, and they still have a fast left leg. I would argue, look at someone like Kovacs. He's got, I would say, one of the fastest left legs ever. I mean, he probably does. He's the second best of all time. His left leg is fast. He keeps his heel up. And I think that most throwers, the vast majority of throwers, need to keep that heel up out of the back. And I think that that's a big lesson with Rachel, is that as I see what she's doing out of the back, she's doing a better job keeping the heel up here. Now she's entering that sprint position, as we've talked about in other videos, that LJ Sylvester referred to that position here as the sprint. Now, I think really that position starts here, okay? And if she can keep that heel up as she sweeps, she's got to get a little push off. As she sweeps, she can push. Sweep, it's like sweep, push, sweep, push. Just a little bit. And if the right cuts down early, now that left leg's moving quickly and she gets to a better position at the front. And then finally, one big aspect that I learned with Taman. Taman's been doing a really good job opening more out of the back before pickup. Being patient here, getting a wider right, not falling. Okay, we've been trying to prevent him from falling. The one big thing that I think watching Krauser, watching Roger Steen, watching Tripp, watching some of these dogs, right, is that an area that Taman has struggled with is that he'll ground here, and when the left comes down, he almost shifts into the left and he's super upright and then tends to throw very flat. He's wrapping his left arm, his left leg's okay with speed, but he's still extending almost in this right hip. So then he's here. You know, if you really brought it down and looked at it through a microscope. So that last big time lesson is that for Taman, and I like to use Roger Steen as an example, because Roger tends to really hold a flexed hip, a flexed trunk very, very hard. I look at Krauser, and Krauser holds it a little bit less than Roger. I look at Joe. Joe holds a little bit more upright trunk, but he has a super fast left leg. So I think the big lesson becomes we have to analyze our individual throwers and look at it and say, okay, if we hit here and we're wrapping properly, which you've watched our videos on how to hold that wrap, okay, with someone like Taman, I actually want his chest down here. And way long ago, we've talked about when that left leg lands, catching the shot means if I drop the shot, it would land behind my right foot, okay? If I get Taman now here, his shot's landing like behind his right heel. But if we can keep working on having hip flexion by putting his chest down, almost, you know, a la Roger Steen, now he can hold this and he has a little bit more flexion here, which will help him rotate a little bit better from that right hip, that right knee, that right quad, that right ankle, and then in turn lead into that bigger throw. So those are some of the big lessons from a big competition. I think it's always important to take a little bit of an inventory. What are the lessons that you learn from other competitors, other coaches? And then what are the lessons that you learn from your own athletes? And then how can we continuously make positive progress moving forward as we head into our next competition? If you guys need help with your training, head over to throwsuniversity.com where you can pick up training and a technical analysis so that we can help you drop some bombs. Peace.